The day after Christine had vanished before his eyes in a sort of dazzlement that still made him doubt the evidence of his senses, Monsieur Raoul de Chagny called again at Madame Valerius. He came upon a charming picture. Christine herself was seated by the bedside of the old lady. The pink and white had returned to the young girl's cheeks. The dark rings round her eyes had disappeared. Raoul no longer recognized the tragic face of the day before. He stood there dumbfounded, then exclaimed, "There seems to be a terrible mystery around us, madam. Around you, around Christine. A mystery much more to be feared than any number of ghosts or genii." Madame Valerius turned a terrified face to Christine, who had already run to her adopted mother and was holding her in her arms. "You must promise, Christine," implored Raoul, "to remain under our protection in the future. It's the only thing that can reassure your mother and me." "That is a promise which I refuse to make you," said the young girl haughtily. "I am mistress of my own actions, Monsieur de Chagny. You have no right to control them. There is only one man in the world who has the right to demand an account of me, my husband. Well, I have no husband, and I never mean to marry." She threw out her hands to emphasize her words, and Raoul turned pale, because he had caught sight of a plain gold ring on Christine's finger. "You have no husband, and yet you wear a wedding ring?" "That's a present," she said, blushing once more and vainly striving to hide her embarrassment. "I saw your ecstasy at the sound of his voice, Christine, the voice that came from the wall. You are under a very dangerous spell, for I myself, when I heard it, was so much fascinated by it that you vanished before my eyes without my seeing which way you passed. Christine, tell us, to whom does that voice belong? Come, Christine, the name of the man who had the audacity to put a ring on your finger." "Monsieur de Chagny," the girl declared coldly, "you shall never know." "The name of your angel of music, mademoiselle, is Eric." Christine turned white as a sheet and stammered, "Who told you? When you went to your dressing room at the opera ball, did you not say, 'Poor Eric'? Well, Christine, there was a poor Raoul who overheard you." "Unhappy man," she exclaimed. "Do you want to be killed? Raoul, forget the man's voice and do not even remember its name. You must never try to fathom the mystery of the man's voice. Swear to me that you will never come to my dressing room unless I send for you." "Then you promise to send for me sometimes, Christine?" "I promise." He kissed her hands and went away, cursing Eric and resolving to be patient. The next day he saw her at the opera. She was still wearing the plain gold ring. He talked to her of the plans which he was forming of his future, of his career. He told her of a polar expedition and said that he would be leaving France in 3 weeks, or a month at latest. "Perhaps we shall never see each other again," he said. "I may die during that expedition." "Or I," she said simply. "In a month we shall have to say goodbye forever. Unless, Christine, we pledge our faith and wait for each other forever." "Hush, Raoul. We shall never be married, that is understood." Then she clapped her hands with childish glee. But, she continued, "if we cannot be married, we can be engaged. Nobody will know but ourselves, Raoul. There have been plenty of secret marriages. Why not a secret engagement? We are engaged, dear, for a month." Raoul jumped at the idea. "Mademoiselle, I have the honor to ask for your hand." "Oh, Raoul, how happy we shall be. We must play at being engaged." And they did. It was the prettiest game in the world, and they enjoyed it like the children that they were. They played at hearts as other children might play at ball, only as it was really their 2 hearts that they flung to and fro, they had to be very, very handy to catch them each time without hurting them. They met every day in the singer's dressing room. She wandered with him hand in hand through her empire at the opera house. It was artificial, but immense, covering 17 stories from the ground floor to the roof and inhabited by an army of subjects. She moved among them like a popular queen, encouraging them all in their labors. Once, when they were passing before an open trapdoor on the stage, Raoul stopped over the dark cavity. "You've shown me over the upper part of your empire, Christine, but there are strange stories told of the lower part. Shall we go down?" She caught him in her arms, as though she feared to see him disappear down the black hole, and in a trembling voice whispered, "Never. I will not have you go there. Besides, it's not mine. Everything that is underground belongs to him." She literally dragged him away. Suddenly, the trap-door was closed, and so quickly that they did not even see the hand that worked it. They were quite dazed. "Perhaps he was there," Raoul said. "Oh, no, he shut himself up. He's working." "What's he working at?" "Oh, something terrible, but it's all the better for us. When he's working at that, he sees nothing. He does not eat, drink, or breathe for days and nights at a time. He becomes a living dead man and has no time to amuse himself with the trapdoors." "I will remove you from his power, Christine. I swear it. You shall not think of him any more." "Is it possible?" She allowed herself this doubt, which was an encouragement, while dragging the young man up to the topmost floor of the theatre, far, very far from the trapdoors, until they reached the roof. Despite the care which she took to look behind her at every moment, she failed to see a shadow which followed her like her own shadow, which stopped when she stopped, which started again when she did, and which made no more noise than a well-conducted shadow should. It was a gorgeous spring evening up on the roof. Yet Christine shivered and nestled in Raoul's arms with a moan. "I'm afraid of going back to live with him, in the ground. Time is at hand. I have only a day left, and if I do not go, he will come and fetch me with his voice." She wrung her hands in anguish, while Raoul pressed her to his heart. "I will let him hear me sing tomorrow evening, and then we will go away. You must come and fetch me in my dressing room at midnight exactly. You must promise me that even if I refuse, you shall carry me off by force." She gave a sigh, to which it seemed to her that another sigh behind her replied. "Didn't you hear?" Her teeth chattered. "No," said Raoul. "I heard nothing." "Tell me how you saw him first," he continued. She began. "I had heard him for 3 months without seeing him. I could not find the voice. I looked everywhere, inside and outside my dressing room. It not only sang, but it spoke to me and answered my questions like a real man's voice, with this difference, that it was beautiful as the voice of an angel, the voice which I was expecting and which my father had promised me. The voice and I became great friends, and it asked leave to give me lessons every day. I agreed, and never failed to keep the appointment which he gave me in my dressing room. Well, in a few weeks' time, I hardly knew myself when I sang. It would say, 'Wait and see. We shall astonish Paris.' I waited and lived on in a sort of ecstatic dream. It was then that I saw you for the first time one evening in the house. I was so glad that I never thought of concealing my delight when I reached my dressing room. Unfortunately, the voice was there before me and soon noticed by my air that something had happened. Then the voice was silent. I was terrified lest it had gone for good. The next day," Christine continued with a sigh, "I went back to my dressing room in a very pensive frame of mind. The voice was there. It spoke to me with great sadness and told me plainly that if I must bestow my heart on earth, there was nothing for the voice to do but to go back to heaven. I feared nothing so much as that I might never hear it again. I had thought about my love for you and realized all the useless danger of it. Your position in society forbade me to contemplate the possibility of ever marrying you. Meanwhile, the hours during which the voice taught me were spent in a divine frenzy, until at last the voice said to me, 'You can now, Christine Daae, give to men a little of the music of heaven.' I didn't know how it was that Carlotta did not come to the theatre that night, nor why I was called upon to sing in her stead, but I sang with a rapture I'd never known before. I felt myself fainting," said Christine. "I closed my eyes. When I opened them, you were by my side. But the voice was also there, Raoul. I was afraid for your sake. I dared not recognize you, and began to laugh when you reminded me that you had picked up my scarf in the sea. Alas, I was no longer mistress of myself. I had become his thing. You remember the terrible evening when Carlotta thought that she'd been turned into a toad on the stage, when the house was suddenly plunged into darkness through the chandelier crashing to the floor? Well, my first thought was for you and the voice. I knew that you were not in danger, but I thought to myself, the chandelier may have come down upon the voice. Then I thought that if the voice was safe, it would be sure to be in my dressing room, and I rushed back to it. Suddenly, I heard a long, beautiful wail which I knew well. It seemed to command me, personally, to come, to stand up and come to it. It retreated, and I followed. I came, and this was the extraordinary thing. My dressing room, as I moved, seemed to lengthen out. Evidently, it must have been an effect of the mirrors, and suddenly I was outside the room without knowing how. I was in a dark passage. I was frightened, and I cried out, and suddenly a stone-cold, bony thing seized my wrist and did not let go. I was dragged toward a little red light, and I saw that I was in the hands of a man, wrapped in a large cloak and wearing a mask that hid his whole face. My mouth opened to scream, but a hand closed it, a hand that smelt of death. Then I fainted away. When I opened my eyes, we were still surrounded by darkness. I asked, "Who are you? Where is the voice?" The black shape lifted me onto a white shape. A glad neighing greeted my astounded ears. I recognized the white horse out of the Profeta. There was a rumor in the theatre that it had been stolen by the opera ghost. I believed in the voice, but had never believed in the ghost. I never imagined that the voice and the ghost were one. I calculated that we were in a narrow circular gallery, probably running all round the opera, which is immense underground. We seemed to turn and turn, going down a spiral stair into the very heart of the earth. I felt a moistness in the air, and when the darkness lifted, we were on the edge of a lake. I saw a little boat fastened to an iron ring on the wharf. The man's shape lifted me onto the boat, and he rowed with a quick, powerful stroke. His eyes under the mask never left me. We touched the shore, and I was dazed by a dazzling light. I was in the middle of a drawing room adorned with nothing but flowers. He said, "Don't be afraid, Christine. You are in no danger." It was the voice. The man said, "You are in no danger so long as you do not touch the mask." And the voice which I had recognized under the mask, was on its knees before me and was a man. I began to cry. The man, still kneeling, must have understood the cause of my tears, for he said, "It is true, Christine. I am not an angel, nor a genius, nor a ghost. I am Eric." "Oh, I hate him," cried Raoul. "And you, Christine, tell me, do you hate him too?" "No," said Christine simply. There was an appalling silence between the three of them, the two who spoke and the shadow that listened behind them. Then she said, "That is the terrible thing about it. He fills me with horror, and I do not hate him. He loves me. He lays at my feet an immense and tragic love. He has imprisoned me with him underground for love." I was made to remember that, though he was not an angel, nor a ghost, nor a genius, he remained the voice, for he sang, and that night we did not exchange another word. He sang me to sleep. When I woke up, I was alone, lying on a sofa in a simply furnished little bedroom. I saw on the chest of drawers a note in red ink which said, "My dear Christine, you need have no concern as to your fate. You have no better nor more respectful friend in the world than myself. I'm going out shopping to fetch you all the things that you can need." Well, he returned with his arms full of boxes and parcels and arranged them on the bed, while I overwhelmed him with abuse and called upon him to take off his mask. He replied serenely, "You shall never see Eric's face." He said that he loved me, but that he would never tell me so except when I allowed him, and that the rest of the time would be devoted to music. Then I saw the keyboard of an organ which filled one whole side of the wall. On the desk was a music book covered with red notes. I asked leave to look at it and read, "Don Juan Triumphant." "Yes," he said, "I compose sometimes. I began that work 20 years ago. Let us sing something from the opera, Christine Daae." He spoke these last words as though he were flinging an insult at me. We at once began the duet in Othello, and already the catastrophe was upon us. Eric's black mask made me think of the natural mask of the Moor of Venice. It was Othello himself. Suddenly I felt a need to see beneath the mask. I wanted to know the face of the voice, and with a movement which I was utterly unable to control, swiftly my fingers tore away the mask. Oh, horror! 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 If I live to be 100, I shall always hear the superhuman cry of grief and rage which he uttered when the terrible sight appeared before my eyes. Imagine, if you can, Red Death's mask at the opera ball, suddenly coming to life in order to express with the 4 black holes of its eyes, its nose, and its mouth the extreme anger, the mighty fury of a demon, and not a ray of light coming from the sockets. He hissed mad, incoherent words and curses at me. Feast your eyes, glut your soul on my cursed ugliness. When a woman has seen me as you have, she belongs to me. When I turned away my head and begged for mercy, he drew it to him, brutally, twisting his dead fingers into my hair, and then he hissed at me. Perhaps you think I have another mask. Well, he roared, tear it off, as you did the other. And he seized my hands and dug them into his awful face. It is a corpse that loves you and adores you and will never, never leave you. As long as you thought me handsome, you could have come back. I know you would have come back, but now that you know my hideousness, you would run away for good, so I shall keep you here. Why did you want to see me? Oh, mad Christine, who wanted to see me, when my own father never saw me, and when my mother, so as not to see me, made me a present of my first mask. He had let go of me at last, and was dragging himself about the floor, uttering terrible sobs. Then he crawled away like a snake and went into his room. Presently I heard the sound of the organ. He had rushed to his masterpiece, his Don Juan triumphant, to forget the horror of the moment. It intoxicated me. Eric, I cried, show me your face without fear. If ever again I shiver when I look at you, it'll be because I am thinking of the splendor of your genius. Well, then Eric turned round, for he believed me, and I also had faith in myself. He fell at my feet, with words of love in his dead mouth. He kissed the hem of my dress and did not see that I closed my eyes. My lies were as hideous as the monster who inspired them. I burned his mask, and I managed so well that even when he was not singing, he tried to catch my eye like a dog sitting by its master. Then, at last, after a fortnight of that horrible captivity, during which I was filled with pity, enthusiasm, despair, and horror by turns, he believed me when I said, I will come back. And you went back, Christine, groaned Raoul. Yes, dear. And I must tell you that it was not his frightful threats when setting me free that helped me to keep my word, but the harrowing sob which he gave on the threshold of the tomb. That sob attached me to the unfortunate man more than I myself suspected when saying goodbye to him. Poor Eric. Poor Eric. Christine, said Raoul, rising, you tell me that you love me, but do you really love me? If Eric were good-looking, would you love me, Christine? She rose in turn, put her two trembling arms around the young man's neck and said, Oh, my betrothed of a day, if I did not love you, I would not give you my lips. Take them, for the first time and the last. He kissed her lips. High up above them, an immense night bird stared at them with blazing eyes. Raoul and Christine ran, eager to escape from the roof and the blazing eyes that showed only in the dark. Suddenly, a queer-looking form stood before them and blocked the road. No, not this way. The form, which wore a sort of long frock coat and a pointed cap, said, Quick! Go away, quickly! Christine was already dragging Raoul, compelling him to start running again. Who is that man? He asked. Christine replied, It's the Persian. What's he doing here? Nobody knows. He's always in the opera. They came to Christine's dressing room. Raoul, you must run away with me in spite of myself. Is that understood? I shall be here at 12 tomorrow night. I shall keep my promise whatever happens. Suddenly Christine changed colour. A mortal pallor overspread her features. Oh, heavens, she cried. Eric, Eric, have pity on me. She wrung her fingers, repeating with a distraught air, Oh, heaven! Oh, heaven! But what is it? What is it? Raoul implored. The ring. The gold ring he gave me. Oh, so Eric gave you that ring. You know he did, Raoul. But what you don't know is that when he gave it to me, he said, I give you back your liberty, Christine, on condition that this ring is always on your finger. As long as you keep it, you will be protected against all danger, and Eric will remain your friend. But woe to you if you ever part with it, for Eric will have his revenge. Oh, my dear, the ring is gone. Oh, woe to us both. Raoul was no coward, and yet he trembled. The next day, Raoul was devoted to his preparations for their impending flight. The horse, the carriage, the coachman, the provisions, the luggage, the money required for the journey, and the road to be taken, as he had resolved not to go by train so as to throw the ghost off the scent. Later that night he arrived at the opera. They were giving Faust, as it happened, before a splendid house. Christine Daae met with a rather cold reception. The singer noticed this unfavorable attitude of a portion of the house and was confused by it. She lost her self-assurance more and more. She trembled. She felt on the verge of a breakdown. In front of the house, people remembered the catastrophe that had befallen Carlotta at the end of that act and the historic co-act which had momentarily interrupted her career in Paris. Just then, Carlotta made her entrance in a box facing the stage. A sensational entrance. Poor Christine raised her eyes upon this fresh subject of excitement. She recognized her rival. She thought she saw a sneer on her lips. That saved her. She forgot everything in order to triumph once more. From that moment, the prima donna sang with all her heart and soul. She tried to surpass all that she had done till then, and she succeeded. In the center of the amphitheater, a man stood up and remained standing, facing the singer. It was Raoul. Christine, her arms outstretched, her throat filled with music, the glory of her hair falling over her bare shoulders, uttered a divine cry. It was at that moment that the stage suddenly plunged into darkness. It happened so quickly that the spectators hardly had time to utter a sound of stupefaction, for the stage was at once lit up again, but Christine Daae was no longer there. Raoul uttered a cry. The rest of the audience waited amid an indescribable hubbub. At last, Carolus Fonta stepped to the conductor's desk and in a sad and serious voice said, "Ladies and gentlemen, an unprecedented event has taken place and thrown us into a state of the greatest alarm. Our sister artist, Christine Daae, has disappeared before our eyes, and nobody can tell us how." Before the extraordinary occurrences that took place that evening, the managers, Monsieur Richard and Monsieur Moncharmin, had already undergone a disagreeable change, due not only to the fall of the chandelier on the famous night of the gala performance. One morning, the managers found on their table a note from O.G. himself. "The time has come to carry out the clause in the memorandum book. Please put 20 notes of 1,000 francs each into this envelope, seal it with your own seal, and hand it to Madame Giry, who will do what is necessary." The managers did not hesitate. They seized this opportunity of laying hands on the mysterious blackmailer. They put 20,000 francs into the envelope and, without asking for explanations, handed it to Madame Giry, who had been reinstated in her functions. She went straight to the ghost box and placed the precious envelope on the little shelf attached to the ledge. The two managers were hidden in such a way that they did not lose sight of the envelope for a second during the performance and even afterward. The envelope had not moved. At last, they became tired of waiting and opened the envelope, after ascertaining that the seals had not been broken. The 20 real notes were gone and had been replaced by 20 notes of the Bank of St. Farce. The manager's rage and fright were unmistakable. Monsieur Richard exclaimed, "O.G. has won the first game. We will win the second. Next time I shall have taken my precautions." The next time fell on the same day that beheld the disappearance of Christine Daae. In the morning, a note from the ghost reminded them that the money was due. The note was accompanied by the usual envelope. They had only to insert the notes. This was done about half an hour before the curtain rose on the first act of Faust. Then Madame Giry was sent for. "Good evening, gentlemen. It's for the envelope, I suppose." "Yes, Madame Giry," said Richard most amiably. "And something else besides. I have a little question to put to you. Are you still on good terms with the ghost?" "Couldn't be better, sir," she replied. "Couldn't be better. Ah, well, we're delighted. Look here, Madame Giry," said Richard, in a tone of making an important confidence. "We may just as well tell you, among ourselves, well, you're no fool. The story of the ghost is all humbug, isn't it?" "Well, still between ourselves, it's lasted long enough. The name of the man whose accomplice you are, Madame Giry?" I am the ghost's accomplice? I? His accomplice in what, pray? How much does he give you for bringing him that envelope? 10 francs. We should like to know, continued Monsieur Richard, for what extraordinary reason you have given yourself body and soul to this ghost. Madame Giry's friendship and devotion are not to be bought for 5 francs or 10 francs. That's true enough, she replied, and I can tell you the reason, sir. There's no disgrace in it. Well, it's like this. It was in box 5 one evening. I found a letter addressed to myself, a sort of note written in red ink. I needn't read the letter to you, sir. I know it by heart. Madame Giry, drawing herself up, recited the letter with touching eloquence. Madame, 1832, Mademoiselle Marie Taglioni, a dancer, became Comtesse Gilbert des Voisins. 1846, La Sotta, a dancer, married a brother of the King of Spain. 1870, Teresa Hessier, a dancer, married Dom Fernando, brother to the King of Portugal. 1885, Meg Giry, Empress. You have never seen him? He speaks to you, and you believe all he says? Asked Moncharmin. Yes, she replied. Monsieur Richard took over. Madame Giry, do you know what is in this envelope? Why, of course not, she said. Madame Giry looked into the envelope with a lacklustre eye, which soon recovered its brilliance. 1,000-franc notes, she cried. Now, I will tell you the second reason why I sent for you, Monsieur Richard continued. Madame Giry, I'm going to have you arrested as a thief. Have me arrested? The mouth that spoke those words seemed to spit the 3 teeth that were left to it into Richard's face. Then Madame Giry caught Monsieur Richard a mighty box on the ear before Monsieur Moncharmin had time to intervene. But it was not the withered hand of the angry old beldame that fell on the managerial ear, but the envelope itself, which opened with the blow, scattering the banknotes which escaped in a fantastic whirl of giant butterflies. The 2 managers gave a shout, and the same thought made them both go on their knees, feverishly picking up and hurriedly examining the precious scraps of paper. Are they still genuine, Moncharmin? Above their heads, Madame Giry's 3 teeth were clashing in a noisy contest, full of hideous interjections. But all that could be clearly distinguished was this leitmotif, I, a thief, I, a thief, I... She choked with rage. In any case, she yelped, you, Monsieur Richard, ought to know better than I where the 20,000 francs went to. I? Asked Richard, astounded. And how should I know? Moncharmin, looking severe and dissatisfied, at once insisted that the good lady should explain herself. As for Richard, who felt himself turning red under Moncharmin's eyes, he took Madame Giry by the wrist and shook it violently. He roared, Why should I know better than you where the 20,000 francs went to? Because they went into your pocket, gasped the old woman, looking at him as if he were the devil incarnate. How can you suspect my partner, Monsieur Richard, of putting 20,000 francs in his pocket? I never said that, declared Madame Giry, seeing that it was myself who put the 20,000 francs into Monsieur Richard's pocket. Madame Giry, like the martyr that she was, raised her head, her face beaming with faith in her own innocence. You tell me there were 20,000 francs in the envelope which I put into Monsieur Richard's pocket, but I tell you again that I knew nothing about it. Aha! Said Richard, suddenly assuming a swaggering air which Moncharmin did not like. I knew nothing either. Yes, the terrible dame agreed. Yes, it's true. We neither of us knew anything, but you must have ended by finding out. Richard would certainly have swallowed Madame Giry alive if Moncharmin had not been there. But Moncharmin protected her. He resumed his questions. What sort of envelope did you put into Monsieur Richard's pocket? It was not the one which we gave, the one which you took to box 5 before our eyes, and yet that was the one which contained the 20,000 francs. I beg your pardon. The envelope which Monsieur Richard gave me was the one which I slipped into Monsieur Richard's pocket, explained Madame Giry. The one which I took to the ghost box was another envelope, just like it, which the ghost gave me beforehand, and which I hid up my sleeve. So saying, Madame Giry took from her sleeve an envelope ready prepared and similarly addressed to that containing the 20,000 francs. The managers took it from her. They examined it and saw that it was fastened with seals stamped with their own managerial seal. They opened it. It contained 20 Bank of St. Farce notes, like those which had so much astounded them the month before. "How simple," said Richard. "How simple," said Moncharmin. "Of course," exclaimed Richard, looking a little pale. "It's very clever of O.G. The problem which he had to solve was this: how to do away with any dangerous intermediary between the man who gives the 20,000 francs and the man who receives it. By far the best thing he could hit upon was to come and take the money from my pocket without my noticing it, as I myself did not know that it was there. It's wonderful." "Oh, wonderful, no doubt," Moncharmin agreed. "Only you forget, Richard, that I provided 10,000 francs of the 20 and that nobody put anything in my pocket." Moncharmin's last phrase so clearly expressed the suspicion in which he now held his partner that it was bound to cause a stormy explanation, at the end of which it was agreed that Richard should yield to all Moncharmin's wishes with the object of helping him to discover the miscreant who was victimizing them. It was arranged that Richard should repeat the exact movements which he had made on the night of the disappearance of the first 20,000 francs, and second, that Moncharmin should not for an instant lose sight of Richard's coat-tail pocket, into which Madame Giry was to slip the 20,000 francs. Monsieur Richard went and placed himself at the identical spot where he had stood when he bowed to the Under-Secretary for the Fine Arts. Monsieur Moncharmin took up his position a few steps behind him. Monsieur Richard was bending and bowing and scraping and walking backward, just as if he had had the high and mighty minister, the Under-Secretary for Fine Arts, before him. Only, though these marks of politeness would have created no astonishment if the Under-Secretary of State had really been in front of Monsieur Richard, they caused an easily comprehensible amazement to the spectators of this very natural but quite inexplicable scene when Monsieur Richard had nobody in front of him. Monsieur Richard bowed to nobody, bent his back before nobody, and walked backward before nobody, and a few steps behind him, Monsieur Moncharmin did the same thing. This novel method of walking behind the scenes, adopted by the managers, attracted attention, but the managers themselves thought of nothing but their 20,000 francs. Moncharmin instructed Monsieur Richard. "You walk ahead, and I'll walk immediately behind you. I won't leave you by a step." "But in that case," exclaimed Richard, "they will never steal our 20,000 francs." "I should hope not, indeed," declared Moncharmin. "Then what we are doing is absurd." 2 minutes later, the joint managers locked themselves into their office. Richard said, "Look here, I'm thinking of what I might think if, like last time, after spending the evening alone with you, you brought me home, and if, at the moment of parting, I perceived that 20,000 francs had disappeared from my coat pocket, like last time." "And what might you think?" asked Moncharmin, crimson with rage. "I might think that as you hadn't left me by a foot's breadth, and as, by your own wish, you were the only one to approach me, like last time, I might think that, if that 20,000 francs was no longer in my pocket, it stood a very good chance of being in yours." Moncharmin leapt up at the suggestion. "Oh!" he shouted. "A safety pin! To fasten you up with! A safety pin!" "You want to fasten me with a safety pin?" "Yes, to fasten you to the 20,000 francs. Then, whether it's here or on the drive from here to your place or at your place, you will feel the hand that pulls at your pocket and you will see if it's mine. Oh, so you're suspecting me now, are you? A safety pin!" Moncharmin first locked the door again. Then he knelt down behind Richard's back. "I hope," he said, "that the notes are still there." "Look for yourself," said Richard. "I refuse to touch them." Moncharmin took the envelope from Richard's pocket and drew out the banknotes with a trembling hand. He felt reassured on finding that they were all there and quite genuine. He put them back in the tail pocket and pinned them with great care. Then he sat down behind Richard's coat-tails and kept his eyes fixed on them while Richard, sitting at his writing table, did not stir. "A little patience, Richard," said Moncharmin. "We have only a few minutes to wait. The clock will soon strike 12. Last time, we left at the last stroke of 12. At that moment, The clock on the mantelpiece gave its warning click, and the first stroke of 12 struck. The two managers shuddered. The perspiration streamed down their foreheads. When the clock stopped, they gave a sigh and rose from their chairs. "I think we can go now," said Moncharmin. "Before we go, do you mind if I look in your pocket?" "Oh, but of course, Moncharmin, you must." "Well, I can feel the pin. Yes, I can feel the pin, but I can't feel the notes." Richard tore off his coat. The two managers turned the pocket inside out. The pocket was empty. "The ghost," muttered Moncharmin. But Richard suddenly sprang upon his partner. "No one but you has touched my pocket. Give me back my 20,000 francs. "On my soul," sighed Moncharmin, "on my soul, I swear that I haven't got it." Meanwhile, Raoul's first thought, after Christine Daae's fantastic disappearance, was to accuse Eric. He rushed onto the stage in a fit of love and despair. "Christine! Christine!" he moaned, calling to her as he felt that she must be calling to him from the depths of that dark pit to which the monster had carried her. People pushed him aside, laughing. They thought the poor lover's brain was gone. Hideous thoughts flashed through Raoul's congested brain. Of course! Eric must have discovered their secret, must have known that Christine had played him false. What a vengeance would be his! He ran to the singer's dressing room. "Christine! Christine!" Bitter tears scorched the boy's eyelids as he saw scattered over the furniture the clothes which his beautiful bride was to have worn at the hour of their flight. Raoul, his throat filled with sobs, oaths and insults, fumbled awkwardly at the great mirror that had opened one night before his eyes to let Christine pass to the murky dwelling below. He pushed, pressed, groped about, but the glass apparently obeyed no one but Eric. Suddenly, Raoul remembered something about a gate opening to the Rue Scribe, an underground passage running straight to the Rue Scribe from the lake. Outside, in the street, he passed his trembling hands over the huge stones, felt for outlets, met with iron bars. Were those they? Or these? Or could it be that air-hole? He listened. All was silence. Raoul darted away, roaring with anger, and found himself once more in the light of the stage. He saw a group of men and asked, "I beg your pardon, gentlemen. Could you tell me where Christine Daae is?" Somebody laughed. "This is the gentleman to whom you should put your question, monsieur. Let me introduce Monsieur Mifroid, the commissaire of police." "Ah, Monsieur le Vicomte de Chagny, delighted to meet you, monsieur," said the commissaire. "Would you mind coming with me?" He led the way to the manager's door, and they all rushed into the office on the commissaire's heels. Raoul was the last to enter. As he was about to follow the rest into the room, a hand was laid on his shoulder, and he heard these words spoken in his ear. "Eric's secrets concern no one but himself." He turned around with a stifled exclamation. It was the Persian. The stranger kept up the gesture that recommended discretion, and then, at the moment when the astonished Viscount was about to ask the reason of his mysterious intervention, bowed and disappeared. The first words of the commissaire of police, entering the manager's office, were to ask after the missing prima donna. "Is Christine Daae here?" Monsieur Richard replied with surprise. "No. Why do you ask if Christine Daae is here, monsieur le commissaire?" "Because she has to be found," declared the commissaire of the police solemnly. "What do you mean, she has to be found? Has she disappeared?" "In the middle of the performance." Monsieur Richard took his head in his hands and muttered, "Oh, it's enough to make a man send in his resignation." He pulled a few hairs out of his moustache without even knowing what he was doing. Monsieur Mifroid continued, "Monsieur le Vicomte de Chagny maintains that Christine Daae was carried off by an angel of the opera, no doubt." Raoul spoke. "The angel is called Eric. He lives in the opera. He is the angel of music." Monsieur Mifroid asked the managers, "Have you an angel of music on the premises, gentlemen?" Monsieur Richard and Monsieur Moncharmin shook their heads without even speaking. "Oh," said Raoul, "those gentlemen have heard of the opera ghost. Well, I am in the position to state that the opera ghost and the angel of music are one and the same person." "Gentlemen, it appears that you know the opera ghost," sighed Monsieur Mifroid. Monsieur Richard rose, with the remaining hairs of his moustache in his hand, and said, "No, Monsieur Commissaire, no, we do not know him, but we wish that we did, for this very evening he had robbed us of 20,000 francs. As for Mifroid, he looked at the managers and at Raoul by turns, and wondered whether he had strayed into a lunatic asylum. He passed his hand through his hair. At last he addressed Raoul. "Monsieur, we have talked enough about the ghost. We will now talk about yourself a little, if you have no objection. You were to carry off Mademoiselle Christine Daae tonight?" "Yes, Monsieur le Commissaire," replied Raoul. He continued his questioning. "The carriage that brought you was also going to take you both away?" "That is true, Monsieur le Commissaire." "Did you know that there were 3 other carriages there in addition to yours? And did you know that the carriage of your brother, Monsieur le Comte de Chagny, is gone?" Raoul was baffled. "But this is nothing to say to—" "I beg your pardon? Was not Monsieur le Comte opposed to your marriage with Mademoiselle Daae? And that was why you were carrying Christine Daae out of your brother's reach? Well, Monsieur Chagny, allow me to inform you that your brother has been smarter than you. It is he who has carried off Christine Daae." "No, it's impossible," moaned Raoul, pressing his hand to his heart. Are you sure?" Then he cried, "Oh, I shall catch them!" And he rushed out of the office. At the entrance to the very first corridor, a tall figure blocked Raoul's way. "Where are you going so fast, Monsieur de Chagny?" asked a voice. Raoul impatiently raised his eyes and recognized the astrakhan cap of an hour ago. He stopped. "It's you," he cried in a feverish voice. "You who know Eric's secrets and don't want me to speak of them. Who are you?" "You know who I am. I am the Persian." The man with the ebony skin, the eyes of jade, and the astrakhan cap bent over Raoul. "I hope, Monsieur de Chagny," he said, "that you have not betrayed Eric's secret. Where are you going so fast?" "To Christine Daae's assistance," replied Raoul. "Then, sir, stay here, for Christine Daae is here." "With Eric?" "With Eric." "How do you know?" "I was at the performance, and no one in the world but Eric could contrive an abduction like that. Oh," he said with a deep sigh, "I recognized the monster's touch." "Sir," said Raoul, I do not know what your intentions are, but can you do anything to help me? I mean to help Christine Daae?" "I think so, Monsieur de Chagny, and that is why I spoke to you." "What can you do?" "Try to take you to her and to him." "Do you think he's near us?" asked Raoul excitedly. "It is quite possible, sir, if he is not at this moment with his victim in the house on the lake." "Ah, so you know the house too?" "If he is not there, he may be here in this wall, in this floor, in this ceiling. Come." Raoul followed the Persian. After going up and down several staircases which Raoul had never seen before, the 2 men found themselves in front of a door which the Persian opened with a master key. "Sir," said the Persian, "your tall hat will be in your way. You would do well to leave it in the dressing room." "What dressing room?" asked Raoul. "Christine Daae's." The Persian, letting Raoul through the door which he had just opened, showed him the actress's room opposite. He pushed the young man into Christine's dressing room. There was a sound of someone stirring in the lumber room, and a few seconds later a finger tapped the door. "Come in," said the Persian. A man entered, also wearing an astrakhan cap and dressed in a long overcoat. He bowed and took a richly carved case from under his coat, put it on the dressing table, bowed once again, and went to the door. "Let no one see you go out." The servant glanced down the passage and swiftly disappeared. The Persian opened the case. It contained a pair of long pistols. Handing one of the pistols to Raoul, he said, "We shall be 2 to 1, but you must be prepared for everything, for we shall be fighting the most terrible adversary that you can imagine. But you love Christine Daae, do you not?" "I worship the ground she stands on. But you, sir, who do not love her, tell me why I find you ready to risk your life for her. You must certainly hate Eric." "No, sir," said the Persian sadly. "I do not hate him. If I hated him, he would long ago have ceased doing harm." "Has he done you harm?" "I have forgiven him the harm which he has done to me." He fetched a stool and set it against the wall, facing the great mirror that filled the whole of the wall opposite. Then he climbed on the stool, and with his nose to the wallpaper seemed to be looking for something. "Ah," he said, after a long search, "I have it." Then, bearing against the mirror, and after a short silence, he said, "It takes some time to release the counterbalance when you press on the spring from the inside of the room." "But it's not turning," said Raoul impatiently. "Oh, wait. The mechanism has obviously become rusty, or else the spring isn't working. Unless it is something else," added the Persian anxiously. "He may simply have cut the cord of the counterbalance and blocked the whole apparatus. After all, he commands the walls, the doors, and the trapdoors. In my country, he is known by a name which means the trapdoor lover." Raoul was perplexed. "But why do these walls obey him alone? He did not build them." "Yes, sir. That is just what he did." The Persian made a sign to him to be silent and pointed to the glass. There was a sort of shivering reflection. Their image was troubled as in a rippling sheet of water, and then all became stationary again. "Look out," declared the Persian, "and be ready to fire." Suddenly, the mirror turned, in a blinding daze of crosslights, carried Raoul and the Persian with it, and hurled them from the full light into the deepest darkness. The wall, behind them, having completed the circle which it described upon itself, closed again, and the two men stood motionless for a moment, holding their breath. At last, the Persian decided to make a movement. Raoul heard him slip to his knees and feel for something in the dark with his groping hands. Suddenly, the darkness was made visible by a small, dark lantern, and Raoul instinctively stepped backward as though to escape the scrutiny of a secret enemy. He soon perceived, however, that the light belonged to the Persian, whose movements he was closely observing. Raoul heard a faint click and saw a very pale, luminous square in the floor of the passage. It was as though a window had opened on the opera cellars, which were still lit. Raoul heard the Persian whisper, "Follow me, and do all that I do." He saw the Persian hang by his hands from the rim of the opening, with his pistol between his teeth, and slide into the cellar below. Raoul went on his knees also, and hung from the trap with both hands. "Let go," said a voice. Then he dropped into the arms of the Persian, who told him to lie down flat, closed the trapdoor above him, and crouched down beside him. Raoul tried to ask a question, but the Persian's hand was on his mouth, and he heard a voice which he recognized as that of the commissaire of police. Raoul and the Persian were completely hidden behind a wooden partition. The faint light was just enough to enable Raoul to distinguish the shape of things around him. He could not restrain a dull cry. There were 3 corpses there. The commissaire's voice was now heard more distinctly. He was asking for information about the system of lighting. The stage manager showed him a door that opened the box reserved for the chief lighting man. "I say," said the commissaire, I can't open this door. Is it always so difficult?" The stage manager forced it open with his shoulder. He saw that at the same time he was pushing a human body, and he could not keep back an exclamation, for he recognized the body at once. "The lighting man! Poor devil! He is dead." Monsieur Commissaire Mifroid, whom nothing surprised, was stooping over the big body and said, No, he's dead drunk, which is not quite the same thing." "It's the first time, if so," said the stage manager. "Then someone has given him a narcotic. That is quite possible. Look." By the light of a little red lantern at the foot of the stairs, they saw 2 other bodies. The stage manager recognized the lighting man's assistants. Mifroid went down and listened to their breathing. "They're sound asleep," he said. "Very curious business." The stage manager, holding his chin in the hollow of his right hand, which is the attitude of profound thought, said, "It is not the first time that Mauclair has fallen asleep in the theatre. I remember finding him not so very long ago. It was the night when Carlotta gave her famous coac." Monsieur Mifroid fixed the stage manager with a contemplative stare. Raoul and the Persian, themselves unobserved, watched the removal of the 3 bodies by a number of scene-shifters, who were followed by the commissaire and all the people with him. When they were alone, the Persian made a sign to Raoul to stand up. Raoul did so, but As he did not lift his hand in front of his eyes, ready to fire, the Persian told him to resume that attitude and to continue it, whatever happened. "But it tires the hand unnecessarily," whispered Raoul. "Then shift your pistol to the other hand," said the Persian. "But I can't shoot with my left hand." Thereupon, the Persian made this queer reply. "It's not a question of shooting with the right hand or the left. It's a question of holding one of your hands as though you were going to pull the trigger of a pistol itself. When all is said, you can put the pistol in your pocket. Let this be clearly understood, or I will answer for nothing. It is a matter of life and death. Now, silence and follow me."